the shores of Lake Michigan at the close to the Cut River Bridge. I want to record some of this sound. It is, well, it's waves. We're at this beach here. We're on the north side of the highway, Highway 2 of the Cut River Bridge. So I guess this is as big as the river is, going under it right here. Alternate trail, I didn't film it's coming down a whole bunch of steps. Alternate trail, I think we'll cross the creek here, the river, and then go back up the other side where we saw a trail sign. Or we spend the whole day getting lost hiking. Let's see. These are the steps we come down, a small part of it. I don't know. Many steps. It's going way up there. Haven't seen the bridge yet from here. I can hear vehicles. Okay, that could be the bridge. These are steps we'd have to go back up the ones that came down. We're going to try to hike around on another trail. Should be steps on it. And I thought I saw a bridge. Okay, I'm looking through here. I bet that's a walk bridge over there. We'll see. We gotta get out of here. There's really no good view of the sideways to the bridge that I've seen yet. Maybe.
Yeah, so if you guys don't like my jokes, don't give me the axe just yet. We'll get through this together, alright? So, hello everybody, welcome to Mill Creek, and welcome to the Mill Creek Saw Pit. My name is Mitch Fry, I'm the senior millwright here at Mill Creek. Welcome to our lovely saw pit. Now, the reason why this place here is because, well, we didn't always used to have that mill back there. So, this is how we used to acquire all of the lumber that we would need for building or doing anything with wood. Anything from boards to planks to beams to posts, all that would have been made right here at your saw pit. Now, back in the day, they wouldn't always look like this lovely saw or scaffolding setup that you see here today. Instead, most traditional saw pits were actually a hole dug in the ground. On top of that hole, they would lay their logs and then take a great big old saw like this guy, turn those logs into boards. And because it was a pit where you operated a saw, that made it the saw pit. Real creative, right? Names fit for purpose. The idea is it's short, it's sweet, it gets the point across, and it should be relatively easy to remember. A pit where you operated a saw pit. Works well. Now, before we can actually talk about turning our wood into boards here at the saw pit, let's first talk about how we're going to get ourselves some wood to start with. And that's where this guy comes into play. This is my axe. Now this axe here has a couple names we like to call it. The first is the felling axe, and that's the axe we use for felling our trees or chopping them down. And then we have the hewing axe. So hew means to cut or to cut into. So this is the axe we use for cutting into our wood. Now, with that said, we'll go out in the woods with our felling axe, take up our big old axe, find ourselves a nice good old side tree, and then whack!
Timber!
Boom! So now your trees on the ground. You'll chop off all the branches, chop your logs up in the length about 10 to 15 feet long, like what you see here. Then once you have your logs cut to length, you're going to want to get those logs up off the ground, because you see the soil around here, it's full of rocks, like the one this lady is kindly sitting on top of. Now, because of all these rocks, we want to avoid damaging our axe head by hitting one, so we're going to get our log up off the ground and put them on these great big wooden blocks called saw blocks, or saddle blocks. Then once the log is safely up off the ground, we're then going to need to make sure that they don't roll away from us, because a log is cylindrical and thus can roll. So to keep our logs safely in place, we're going to use a couple of these guys. Hey, you guys just want this called, ladies and gentlemen?
A log holder.
Close enough, but not quite. Any other? Nope, not quite.
Log
What?
anchor?
This is not an axe. Some people do call these things staples or wood staples. Some call them staple dogs, but I prefer the term log dog. That's what used in the timber business, as used in the timber business. Back in the day, they called them log dogs, and while they may not have a lot of bite, they sure do bite a lot of bark. Now, to use these, they take one end, hammer them into the log, take the other end, hammer them into the saddle block. Then once both sides are secure like so, our log here is now not going anywhere, and that's great because then that means we can safely move forward with the next part of the demonstration. Now, with that in mind, what we are doing here is something known as squaring on this side of our saw pit. This is where we hew a log from a nice round log into a square beam like what you see on top of the scaffold, or like what you see off to the side back here. Now the first step of this process begins with my now renamed hewing axe. And what we use this for is we get up on top of the log, and we go down the entire length of the log, cutting V-shaped notches every so often down the length of the log. Now these notches that we cut are designed to help bust up the wood fibers inside the log, making it easier for us to then go and chop off the sides. Now each notch we make is going to be set at a specific distance apart from each other. The distance between each notch is dependent on this guy here. This is my broad axe. Gets its name from this nice broad head that you see here. Broad meaning wide, so it's a wide head axe. Now this axe, when we are making our notches, the notches should be about the same distance as the top and the bottom of the axe head, as that makes this guy's job a lot easier. Now this guy is what we use for squaring our timber. And the reason why is because of how it's designed. Because while on one side of our axe head, it has that traditional wedge shape for cutting that most axes have. However, on the other side of the axe head, it is almost completely flat. The reason for that is because, well, this flat side on the back is designed to help make sure that what you cut off cuts off nice and smoothly, or at least as smooth as you're going to get with an axe. Now, the idea is that on this back side, because it's going to be right up against the side of the wood, it's kind of shaped with a slight curve to it to kind of act like a scoop. Similar to how an ice cream scoop, when you scoop it through ice cream, leaves behind a relatively smooth trail behind it. That's the same idea. So this wedge, as you go into your chop, that's going to chop into the wood, while the back side slices away timber fibers away from the rest of the. Do beware of flying wood. I'm going to take up my hewing axe here. I'm going to get up on top of my log. Plant my axe here for a nice, good, solid chop. Take up the axe and then chop. There we go. Got ourselves our notch. Now with the notch in place, we're going to come back over with our broad axe here. Line up our shot with the axe. Take back the axe and then chop. Just like that. And that's how you square up your timber. Now by the end of our day, our log should be nice and squared up. It should look similar to what you see on top of the scaffold. And that means we're ready to turn it into boards. Now, a professional woodsman could probably have that entire log squared off in about 45 minutes. As I've only been doing this for a couple of years, that will not be happening. Now, once the log has been squared up, we'll bring it on over here to the saw pit, where we bust out this big old boy. This is the pit saw. It gets its name from the fact that it's the saw in the saw pit, thus pit saw. And as you can see, it is quite big. I stand about 6 feet tall, and this thing goes well above my head. So obviously, this is not a saw for one man to operate. As indicated by the handles on top and on the bottom, this is a two-man saw. Now this saw is also referred to as a rip cut saw or rip cut style saw because of how it's used. You'll notice that all the teeth here are facing one direction, downwards. That's because as a rip cut saw, it's only going to be cutting in one direction as it cuts down the entire length of the log along with the grain, not against the grain. Against the grain, which would be across the side of the log, would make it a cross cut saw. The teeth would be facing both up and down so it can cut both ways. As a rip cut saw, it's only going to cut in one direction, and that's what direction the teeth are facing. In this case, all the teeth here are facing downwards, as you can see, meaning it will only cut in the downward motion. So when operating it, when you go up, no cuts. When you go down, that's where all your cuts are happening, and thus the guy on the bottom will be doing the majority of the actual work cutting. Now, let's talk about who's operating this thing. Now the gentleman on top would be known as the tiller man. His job is just like a ship's tiller, to steer the saw into the cut, following a chalk or charcoal line prepared beforehand. Then you have the guy on the bottom. The guy on the bottom is known as the pit man because he'll be working with the pit saw down in the saw pit, thus making him the pit man. And in many ways his job was also quite literally the pits. Because as the pit man, not only will he be the guy at the bottom of the saw pit operating the pit saw, doing all the actual work cutting as he pulls down, but it's a lot hotter down there than it is up here where we at least get a breeze every once in a while. So he's going to be sweating from both the heat, the exertion, he's surrounded by dirt, he's got bugs for company, he has sawdust raining down on his head, and just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it rains. And when it rains, anything and everything above the pit goes and joins up in the saw pit, so after about 10 to 15 hours of hard work, he's going to be crawling up out of that pit looking like a Michigan mud man covered head to toe in nature's milkshake known as mud. Fun times, right guys? Now, in order for me to properly showcase how this saw operates, I'd like to ask the audience if there's anybody here willing to serve as my pit man. Alright, we have Garfield up here. Gonna be a glutton for punishment on this, alright? Yeah. Alright, come on up. Alright, what's your name?
Caleb.
Hi, Caleb. I like that shirt. It's a really nice shirt.
I'm a Garfield freak.
I used to read books from the library that had Garfield, and it had all these Garfield-ized movie titles. Alright. So, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to climb up top, put my hands on a toes position. Once I do so, I'll let you know to grab a hold of the handles down here. When I say up, we'll bring it up. When I say down, we'll bring it down. Alright? We're going to keep the saw as straight as we can. We're going to move the saw from this cut here to this fresher one. And then we're going to keep the saw as straight as we can. And don't look up because that's how you get sawdust in your face. Alright? Alright, go ahead and grab a hold of the handles. So we're going to bring it on up, bring it on out. Nope, we're going to bring it on out, buddy. Out and away. Bring it on over. Keep that fresh cut. Slide it in. Keep it straight and going up. And then going down. And up. And down. And up. And down. And up. And down. And up. And down. Remember to keep the saw straight, buddy. Going up. And then down, up, 10 to 15 hours a day, generating about 1 board per hour for about 15 boards a day. Obviously 15 boards a day is not much, so you'd have multiple saw pits operating at the same time just to generate enough lumber for a large scale project. Now when you went over to the sawmill over there, that thing can churn out 10 times the amount of lumber, meaning we're going from 15 boards a day here to 150 at the mill, and that's with the power of water. In addition, that mill can be operated with just one person at the controls, so they likely had multiple people on hand to make things run smoothly. Whereas us over here, we needed at least 2 people to operate one saw pit. Now,
And then when the water level gets high enough, it flows through our sluiceway and into our crib, which is a big box full of water right underneath our feet. When I turn this wheel, I can open up the crib gate, a set of doors on the bottom of the crib, and all of that water will fall onto our flutter wheel, our main water wheel here at Mill Creek. Our flutter wheel starts to spin, moving the pitman's arm up and down. And the pitman's arm does the pitman's job, moving this saw up and down. Now, as this saw is moving, these beams above my head transform that vertical movement into horizontal movement, making this arm right here move back and forth, which we want because when I push this lever forward, this arm clamps down onto my rag wheel. And if that arm is moving back and forth like I just described, it will begin to push that rag wheel forward, turning it and turning our axle, bringing this carriage into the saw blade. Now when I'm done cutting a board, I of course want a way to reset this, so I have a way to do just that. I first close up the crib gate by turning this wheel in the other direction, and then I engage my lantern gear, which is a gear right down here that looks like an old-fashioned lantern. And it connects with the teeth on my rag wheel. Now my lantern gear is already connected to my tub wheel, my second water wheel here at Mill Creek. And when I pull this lever, I pour water onto it, making my tub wheel turn, making my lantern gear turn, and making my rag wheel turn, bringing this carriage back in the other direction. Now, before we begin, does anybody have any questions? All right, then it is time for the fun part. I do want to let y'all know that it will be a little loud in here. Not too bad, just like one of those air popcorn machines. Still, I thought I'd let you know, just in case. Like a flat pinwheel. The pole in the center connects it to our lantern gear to take us back. So I am first going to get our flutter wheel up and running, and then our tub wheel, and that will then conclude our demonstration. So let's get moving right along.
it's backing up from. As it turns it off, it's going to slow too fast there. Oh, there we go.
And that is our water-powered sawmill here at Mill Creek. Thank you all so much for being a wonderful audience. If you have any questions, I'll be around, so feel free to ask. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.